incentivising people? How was that done?
Okay, so with the e-currency scheme, we're offering people this 10% bonus when they pay in. So in effect, that's like saying to someone, everything you go and spend on is going to be 10% cheaper. Actually, nearly 11% cheaper if you do the maths. So that's quite a massive incentive. You know, where can you put money in a bank account and get 10% interest? No. If you put money in the Brixton Pound, that's what you get, a 10% bonus straight away. More spending power. Pretty big incentive.
How do you achieve that then? Is that by an agreement with the businesses in the area?
No, so as I was saying earlier, that bonus exists within the system. If a business wants to exchange that credit back into sterling, they have to pay a 10% hit on it. So there's more value within the system, but that value disappears if you take that credit back into sterling. So that creates a customer incentive. It also creates disincentive for businesses to convert it back into sterling. That's not what we want them to do. No. We want them to respend.
And have you found that you've found a sustainable model in the Brixton Pound in running the organisation that sort of backs a Brixton Pound or administers it? Have you found a happy medium?
I think we're getting there. I mean, we definitely made a lot of mistakes early on. I think it took us too long to realise that we were going to need a continual stream of funding and revenue to really make it successful. I think all the media attention that the Brixton Pound got early on was great, and we probably thought that would continue and would somehow drive behaviour in Brixton. I think what we realised eventually was, in fact, that we were well known on the world stage, but actually getting people to use the scheme in Brixton takes a lot more resource on the ground, really, and that's what you need some funding to be able to do. So we're getting there now. We have a paid team of 3 people at the moment, which it's mainly project funding from a number of sources, but it's it's quite hand to mouth. It's like any non-profit organisation. You always have to be looking to what happens after the next 6 months.
So when you're talking about local business, is that any business within a local area?
Yeah, so I mean, the way we define things for the Brixton Pound, I mean, in a sense we don't define it too much, but any business that considers itself to be in Brixton, and we found that that's actually strayed out to just beyond the edges, that we have businesses in Herne Hill, in Stockwell, just on the borders really, is welcome to join the scheme. In terms of what kind of business, obviously we're trying to promote independent and locally owned businesses. What's quite interesting is it's not always obvious. It's not always as obvious as you think to define what that might be. In fact, one of the things we discovered is that many of the independent businesses in Brixton are not necessarily locally owned. So it may be that someone runs their shop in Brixton and they actually live 5-10 miles away. But it's still an independent business. It's still more likely to have local staff on reasonable pay. It's still more likely to have a local economic effect that's positive rather than, say, a national chain.
So do you find yourself saying, I mean, it must be both sides, that you're approaching business and business is approaching you?
Yes, it
I
is.
suppose.
Yeah.
So do you find yourself in a position to say no to business and say, come on?
The only one we've had at the moment is right in the centre of Brixton. There's a Kentucky Fried Chicken, and the owner of KFC made it known to us that he wanted to accept the Brixton Pound, and we did get into a bit of a fluster about that. He told us that he buys some products locally, and that obviously he's local and the staff are local, so why shouldn't he be allowed to be part of the scheme? That's quite difficult, really. It makes you realise that it's not as easy to define this, but he is part of a national or indeed global franchise, and we felt that was a strong enough decision to say no. In fact, in the end, we didn't exactly say no or yes, we really just let inertia prevail. But it did make us realise that ideally you need some sort of defined policy on what kind of businesses you want to attract.
Especially if you grow up here.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, in actual fact, there's nothing to stop KFC or any other business in Brixton from accepting the cash. We can't stop them. If they want to accept the cash, then they can walk into exchange point, change it back into sterling. We can't stop them doing that. Obviously, with the e-currency, it's different. With the cash, we can't control how that circulates, and that's both good and bad, really.
So if I understood it right, at the moment there's like, unless you're a local business or employed with a local business, there's no way for you to earn Brixton pounds at the moment, right?
So yeah, ways. Well, yeah, pretty much. I mean, ways of earning Brixton pounds. Yeah, certainly might be. Yes, if you work in a business that accepts them, they might give you part of your salary in Brixton pounds. If you're locally based and providing some kind of service and you know, like you could be a plumber or a yoga teacher or whatever, it doesn't matter, you know, if you want to accept Brixton pounds, you could earn that way. But yeah, those are the chief ways.
And is there any benefit in this for a person, for example, lives in Brixton but works somewhere else?
I think if that person lives in Brixton, you have to assume that they spend enough time in Brixton, you know, if they go out for a meal, you know, once every couple of weeks, or they go to their local pub, they're still going to have quite a bit of opportunity to spend in their community.
Yeah, but do they, I mean, is there a way they would get the benefits of the strength in local economy?
Absolutely, yeah. If I live in a impoverished area that has no economic strength in its community, the chances are there may be an effect on crime, there may be an effect on the shopping opportunities I have, there may be an effect on the sense of community. So yeah, massively so. Yeah.
With that, like 10% hit that will arrive somewhere, like when you were saying about potentially businesses then paying their business rates to the council, would the 10% hit then kind of like be taken on by the council somehow?
This is one of the key talking points, and what the plan that we've hatched at the moment, which is probably going to take a while to put into practice, is we may well launch the business rate scheme initially and fund the 10% malus or exchange tax in order to get it up and running. But the council knows that long term it would indeed need to fund that 10%, because you can't tell businesses that their business rates just got 10% more expensive if they want to pay in Brixton pounds. However, since we're also launching this payroll scheme with the council, where they can potentially pay a proportion of their staff salaries in Brixton pounds, that then gives them an opportunity to recycle Brixton pounds through the system and avoid having to pay the malus. Or even they can accept sterling business rates, pay the 10% malus, and buy Brixton pounds to give to their staff for salaries, and then of course they get 10% bonus. So there are plenty of ways of mitigating that problem. And again, it's all about being creative and creating what we call a virtuous circle. As soon as you create that spending cycle and you make sure that you've got all points covered, it works. It's only when you have a blockade somewhere where someone is only receiving and not spending.
Wouldn't somebody who was receiving part of their salary in Brixton pounds expect to get that 10% uplift on the bit they got in Brixton pounds?
That's definitely an issue, yeah. So we're still ironing this out, but we may either go for a model where they don't in that position, but they get the convenience factor that some of their salary just arrives. You know, and we're not talking about very much. Someone might say, for example, I'd like to receive £50 a month of my salary in Brixton pounds. The other option is, at the moment we've done some modelling that shows we can probably build the salary scheme up much higher than we can build the business rate scheme up. And if you do that, then you might have a situation where, say, Lambeth takes half of the bonus and uses that to cross-subsidise the malus, and then uses the other half and pays that to the staff, so if they're still being benefit. Or other possibilities are that we'll find other ways for the council to respend. So Lambeth is committed to be a cooperative council, which means that it's also looking at ways of rewarding its citizens when they do stuff that's positive, like you know, taking your rubbish to the dump or wiping graffiti off the wall or whatever it might be. So in that situation, the council could potentially reward people using extra £50, giving them another opportunity to spend.